En esta ocasión, en Cuarto de Antigravedad, daremos una vuelta al mundo en 24 minutos.
Así es, desde Japón hasta Sudáfrica encontramos cosas fabulosas. Soy Phil en Toronto y tenemos entrevistas con Garth Ennis, Fantagraphics y Karl Meshek a continuación.
Y yo sigo siendo Nick en Nueva York con toneladas de anime como el fantasma en la concha en este episodio. Así que no se vayan de Cuarto de Antigravedad.
¡Cuarto de Antigravedad!
Anime y manga son términos de animación en las tiras cómicas. Alguna vez existió una épica de manga y anime llamada El fantasma en la concha. Se convirtió en anime, fue un éxito en Japón y ahora llega a Norteamérica en exhibiciones privadas. Marvin Laker, de Manga Entertainment, discute acerca de esta invasión japonesa.
Well, when people ask me what is anime, it's really an abbreviation for animation, but very stylized. The characters have more development in them, more animation flowing and movement. It has more intricate backgrounds, and the plot is definitely more intricate than a regular westernized animation that you would see on a Saturday morning cartoon show or even in a feature film. Ghost in the Shell is our major theatrical release this year. It's a full-length feature Japanese animation, very highly stylized, and it stars a gorgeous woman who is really a cyber life form that was created to perform espionage into other people's computers and in cyberspace to gather data and information to spy on weapons and other countries' plans. And she escapes and is looking for a human biological life form so that she can disappear into the background.
Chief, the puppet master's gone. What in God's name are you... Shut the defense walls now, damn it!
One of the main characters is Major Kusanagi, and she's really a cybernetic person. The only original human part left of her is her brain. And in her quest to find this cybernetic life form, the puppet master, she questions her own existence and whether she's really human or not, since most of her body parts, in fact all other than her brain, have been replaced. And she is in charge of the team of Special Police Force to find the puppet master. Bato is one of Major Kusanagi's specialized agents, and he is more like a Rutger Hauer type character that is real tough and is very experienced in these types of covert operations. The director, Mamuro Oshii, has created a digital generated animation, which is his theory of animation created by images and memory. It's a combination of cell animation, effects, and computer-generated graphics. Some of the scenes that utilize these techniques are the scene inside of the marketplace where they think they've spotted the puppet master and tracked her down. There's also the scenes, there's a classic fight scene that occurs in the streets where an invisible puppet master is fighting against the security forces, and this film has done extremely well in the East. In more Western civilization, in the United States and in Europe, the film has been received with rave reviews, and it seems to be appealing to a more mass audience than any Japanese animation film has done in the past. This could be the biggest Japanese animation film in the world.
Seguro, el manga es genial y todo eso, pero ¿qué lo hace diferente de las tiras cómicas norteamericanas? Scott McCloud, el autor de Entendiendo las tiras cómicas, nos lo dice.
Hi, I'm Scott McCloud, author of Understanding Comics, and today we're going to be talking about Japanese comics, or manga as they're known, and how they evolved. Unlike American comics, which evolved from many different sources and many different artistic influences, Japanese comics evolved primarily from one single artist, a man named Osamu Tezuka, who began making comics in 1945 and continued through 4 decades and 150,000 pages. He influenced most of the major comics artists working today, and he helped found an industry which is now the most successful comics industry in the world. The key to manga's incredible success is in its approach to storytelling. Manga artists employ a host of techniques which are designed specifically to involve the reader, to make the reader feel like a participant in the story, not just an observer. For example, Japanese comics have always been more cartoony than their European and American counterparts. But this isn't just an arbitrary stylistic choice. This is because they've discovered a very important power in art, the power of simplicity. Sometimes a few simple lines can more effectively describe a character than a more detailed rendering, because it allows the readers to fill in the blank. Just a circle, 2 dots, and a line can be enough to trigger a mental response, which not only tells us that there's a face there, but also feels more like our own face. It's a more personal sort of identity, and Japanese comics often get very close to that line. Another important technique that helps manga artists to stimulate reader involvement is their revolutionary approach to motion. Unlike their American and European counterparts, Japanese artists offer a very subjective view of motion, one that allows the readers to feel as if they're moving just as fast as anything in the picture. Today's popular Japanese comics, the ones that have been translated in America, like Ranma 1/2, Akira, or Lone Wolf and Cub, bear little resemblance to Tezuka's work, but they still have his influence deep inside them. And really, they're like leaves on a tree that you can follow back through the branches and down to the trunk. That trunk is Osamu Tezuka.
Queremos saber, ¿qué tiras cómicas extranjeras lees?
My favorite international comic would probably have to be Tintin. As a kid, grew up with him, and I still read him to this very day.
My favorite international comic is Asterix, and even now I still read it every once in a while because I almost have the whole collection.
I love manga, and I especially can't wait for the Ghost in the Shell movie release.
My favorite international comic is Astro Boy, by far.
Cuando volvamos, Phil con reseñas de CD-ROMs y cocina mundial en la Casa Internacional de Pancakes. ¡Fantástico!
Cuarto de Antigravedad. CD-ROM a ton.
Esta semana les hablaré de Crazy Havoc. ¿De quién? Para el Sony PlayStation. Escuchen esto, se parece a Kiliak, el caos genético, ¿lo recuerdan? Es un juego de tiro similar a Doom, pero el detalle es que Crazy Havoc es más refinado, se ve mucho mejor. Además, no hay nada como comenzar un juego y ver que está presentado en sonido estereofónico, porque tengo 5 bocinas y un sonido surround. Encendí esta cosa, el sonido es increíble. Las gráficas son más refinadas en Kiliak, como ya dije, y la introducción del juego es bastante buena. No hay mala actuación. Conforme avanza de nivel, cambian de países. Empiezan en Rusia, pueden terminar en Japón, pueden terminar en Norteamérica, en Nueva York, en Arabia Saudita, y el terreno es muy similar al que esperarían en estos países. Les daré un consejo. En el primer nivel, por ejemplo, entrarán a una arena. Hay 4 arenas y un objeto que deben recoger. Recojan sus objetos de las arenas y salgan de ahí, porque si no se mantienen en movimiento, vendrá el Caballero Negro, que es un robot enorme que los volará y tendrán que comenzar una y otra vez. Crazy Havoc, tengo que darle 4 puntos de 5. ¿Por qué deduzco medio punto? Porque Psygnosis, los que crearon este juego, sé que crearon un mejor juego de tiro. Crazy Havoc, tienen que verlo, no se lo pierdan.
Atención. Vértigo y Peter Copper presentan el sistema. Policías corruptos, asesinos en serie, terroristas y escándalos políticos son el tema de esta serie de 3 partes. La revista Indie número 14 ya está a la venta, presentando escenas de U.S.A. Comic y entrevistas con Billy Tucci, Sander Cannon y Bud Root. Big Entertainment y Alliance están transformando el imperio de John James Mulcon en una serie de televisión. El imperio de Mulcon fue una serie de 6 números a la venta el año pasado.
No food, no water. What comics would you like on a desert island?
If I could take 3 comics onto a desert island, I would take Bone, Scud, and Bone.
No se vayan porque seguiremos recorriendo el mundo con Garth Ennis y Fantagraphics, además de algunas tiras cómicas sudafricanas después de esto.
Cuarto de Antigravedad. Comicopia.
Hola amigos turistas, soy Nick y están en Comicopia, mi reseña semanal de 35 minutos de tiras cómicas bajas en calorías. Esta semana les hablaré de tiras cómicas internacionales y primero tengo el libro Independiente Bajo Agua, número 5, desde la Tierra del Maple. En esta edición, bueno, es difícil de explicarlo. Verán, bajo el agua está escrito con un lenguaje muy extraño y diferente. Y no me refiero al latín. La gente de bajo agua se comunica a través de un lenguaje que solo entienden ellos y Chester Brown, su creador. La idea no es matar el idioma, sino que tú, el lector, entienda estos jeroglíficos poco a poco. Esta tira cómica es divertida si les gusta descifrar o incluso intentar decir las palabras. Que en tazón. Si esta es una obra de arte cómica o una gran broma, aún así es genial y le doy 3 puntos en la escala antigravedad. Después, Kira Warren Beatty porque es la chica tanque, la australiana más loca desde Cocodrilo Dundee. Esta edición, la número 3, comienza con una introducción muy a la chica tanque. Numerosos líderes y celebridades que hablan de dominio del mundo y de ser aplastados por una gran rana gigante. Estos chicos están locos. También verán a la chica tanque embarazada y la aparición de la princesa Diana. Y, para aquellos que creen que algo nos acecha, vean esto. Es un extraño rostro en Marte. Esta tira cómica tiene dibujos que parecen salidos de un manicomio. Lo que es perfecto, porque los guiones son iguales. La chica tanque es un libro que nunca escatima el entretenimiento. Le doy a esta visión de la vida australiana 4 puntos en la escala antigravedad. Está bien, ¿no? Finalmente, de la Tierra del Sol naciente, estás bajo arresto. Dado que los dibujos no son muy especiales, es de esperarse que este libro tenga una buena historia, y afortunadamente así es. Trata de 2 mujeres policías japonesas, quienes en esta ocasión persiguen a un motociclista misterioso. No lo dejarán un segundo y tiene un final que es un kudapai. Y ni siquiera sé qué significa, por lo que debe ser bueno. Manga y anima son mis preferidos en las tiras cómicas extranjeras. Así que le doy a este libro 4 de 5 en la escala antigravedad. Bien, fue todo en Comicopia para esta semana. Hasta la próxima.
Garth Ennis es líder en las tiras cómicas inglesas y también ha dejado una gran impresión en los Estados Unidos.
I don't tend to think a great deal about the global village in terms of what I'm producing. The ideas come from all over the place, from dreams, from things that I see happen on the street, from a chance remark someone might make, from a person you meet, you might get an instant idea for a character. I find that particularly the kind of stuff I do, which is mostly a sort of a black humor approach to writing comics, to writing fiction, is fairly universal, although not everyone loves it. Any kind of dividing line is not a national one, and a lot of the stuff that I write, I suppose, is inspired by movies and books from both sides of the Atlantic. The comic I'm spending most of my time on at the minute, Preacher, is very heavily Western influenced. And although obviously that's a peculiarly American art form, you'll find there are very few people in Britain, for instance, who didn't watch Westerns and so on growing up, and so can respond to, well, various sort of familiar archetypal images like, you know, the lone gunfighter. Arseface got his name because one of the characters in Preacher simply shouted out, "That fella's got a face like an arse." And I was just amused by the thought of one guy trying to blow his head off, but succeeding only in managing to remove his face, and then having to live with the results, and thus Arseface was born. My personal take on the whole question of violence in comics and extreme situations in comics and so on is that it's not real. It's a fictionalized representation of violence. I'm aware of the difference. I don't like real violence, and I don't go out to, I suppose, promote real violence, but I don't honestly think it's up to me to censor myself for what other people get out of my work. All I can do is do my own work, be as honest as possible in what I write, and put it out there, and then get on to the next project. As for the internet, don't like it. I'm not on it, and I'm convinced the computers are all going to start talking to one another soon, like in Terminator, and one day all these internet users will find Arnie at the door with a shotgun. So personally, tend to stay well clear.
Una compañía de tiras cómicas que se esfuerza por presentar una perspectiva global es Fantagraphics. Hablamos con los encargados.
I'm Gary Gross. I'm one of the co-founders of Fantagraphics Books, and we started publishing comics in 1976. And what makes us different from other publishers, I think, is that we always wanted to publish the best cartooning we could find, and we wanted to treat artists like authors. And we wanted to publish a broad range of material. Yeah, we published a book called Palestine. It's written and drawn by Joe Sacco. And Joe actually went over to Israel and visited the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, interviewed people, and immersed himself in what was going on over there a few years ago. Made a lot of notes, brought home a lot of tapes, and then transformed that into a long narrative that he wrote and drew. We published a book called Holy Cross that's written by an Irish citizen named Malachi Coney, lives in Belfast. And what he's doing is seriously trying to look at how the politics in Ireland cross-pollinate with the personal lives of the people that it affects over there. So I mean, essentially, you know, our agenda hasn't changed. We're trying to publish the best cartooning we can find by the most mature creative talents we can find.
Desde las junglas de Ruanda en su bitácora de viaje llamada Tira Cómica hasta las junglas de su más reciente obra, El Sistema, Peter Cooper es un artista que tiene interés global.
I got started in comics from being interested in comics from when I was a kid, and then just, you know, being a real rabid fan. Comic strips came out of an 8-month trip that my wife and I took through Africa and Southeast Asia. And it was basically my sketchbook. It was really journal entries where I would write something down and then do a picture next to it, and that started to form into basically comics because that's sort of the language that I know. It was like a free-form comic strip. It was a way to communicate with people because I would do a drawing, let's say, and show them, and you know, that was a way to sort of bridge a language gap. Seeing these places in the world that are abstract news items, seeing them up close, you know, sort of when you talk about environmentalism or the rainforest, or, you know, seeing what it is exactly firsthand gives me a greater ability to talk about that rather than just sort of like newsy terms. Well, the system came out of living in New York, and I think I love living here because it's a little bit like traveling all the time. You know, the cross-influence of different cultures and all that. But the seed for the system itself really came from a subway ride where I looked around the train and I wondered, where did all these people come from, and where were they going, and would they run into each other again and influence one another? And that sort of connected to this world, a world view of, you know, seeing it all being associated. And I decided to do it as basically a wordless book. That came out a bit from my travel experience because it is the idea of how to be able to tell these things that you could communicate to people anywhere in the world, give an idea of what it's like here, or, you know, to show things rather than having people say them. It just shows in a lot of ways sort of how broad the possibilities of this medium are.
En Sudáfrica, una tira cómica entretiene a la gente y tiene un gran efecto sobre la política del país. Estábamos por aquí y pudimos charlar con los creadores de Madame y Eva.
Phil, how you doing? I'm Stephen Francis.
And I'm Rico.
And we're coming to you almost live from South Africa. Together we do the most popular cartoon strip in the country, Madame and Eve. The seed was planted about 7 years ago when I first came to this country. I stayed with my new in-laws. I married my wife's South African, who I met in New York City. And while I was staying there, I watched this strange occurrence every day of the madam and the maid interacting. The madam in this case was my own mother-in-law, and the maid was a lady named Florence. I got to know them both pretty well, especially and even my mother-in-law. And my mother-in-law would tell me stories about what the maid did. Oh, you wouldn't believe what the maid did today.
Madame and Eve has a lot of political content. It has to have in South Africa because Madame and Eve is social satire, that's how we see it. And in South Africa, the changes and the development of the political process is so all-enveloping that you end up having politics in your cornflakes. It's unavoidable. But also when we set out to do Madame and Eve, we decided that we were trying to, actually we based ourselves loosely on Doonesbury, and we had the same intent as Doonesbury, you know, to actually create a diary of South African change. That's actually what happened. We didn't set out to do that, but that's actually what happened. If we look over the last 3.5 years of our cartoon strips, you can actually follow the whole political process and the sort of the birth of the new South Africa.
Of course, some of the strips you have to understand South African politics to get the punchline, but a great many of our strips can be understood by anyone. Humor is universal. As a matter of fact, just a couple days ago, we got our first book from Denmark. Here's Madame and Eve in Danish. I could read some. The cover's called Jamin Sortafa Epar Mog Nu, Madam. Of course, I have no idea what that means, but hey, what the heck. I think it means black coffee is in fashion now, Madam. But we're very thrilled, and we hope to see Madam in even a lot more countries, maybe even America soon.
Buscaremos en la bolsa del cartero y veremos qué sale de ahí, así que vuelvan después de esto.
Cuarto de Antigravedad.
Aaron Rodman de Ann Arbor, Michigan, nos dice: me gustó tanto su programa que no salgo ni a la esquina solo para verlos. Genial. También quiero decirte que ya formamos un club de admiradores de Phil. Bien, Aaron, este es un apretón de manos del club de admiradores de Phil. ¡Shakadú!
Mucha gente respondió a la encuesta de quién es el superhéroe más tonto. Y parece que el ganador es, por mucho, el comedor de materia. Sí, el miembro de la Legión de Superhéroes de los 60 que tenía el poder de, escuchen esto, comer y digerir cualquier sustancia. Solo la salsa picante de la cafetería lo detenía. ¡Qué sujeto, eh! ¡Es increíble!
Esta semana lo que queremos saber es... ¿qué disfraz de superhéroe es el más ridículo?
Escríbenos a YTV Canadá, Avenida Jefferson 64, Unidad 18, Toronto, Ontario, Canadá, M6K 3H3, o envíen su correo electrónico a antigravity@ytv.ca. Antigravity, y nuestra página está en http://www.antigrav.com/.
Bien, eso fue todo. Otra vuelta alrededor del mundo.
Sí, el mundo de las tiras cómicas siempre cambia, recibiendo influencia de muchos países y mejorando las tiras cómicas a nivel global.
Es difícil creer que algún día Howard el Pato podría unir a todo el mundo. Hasta el próximo Cuarto de Antigravedad.